What's up, y'all? In today's video, we're going to be talking about why combat sports help you learn faster. And the reason why I wanted to make this video is because martial arts has changed my life on many different levels, whether it be physically through the act of actually skill building and also emotionally, mentally, in terms of the way I think and handle day-to-day challenges and puzzles in life to solve. And I find that when you put yourself in a martial art, whether it be casually as a hobby, maybe just drill classes, cardio classes, even boxercise classes, or you really take the journey of becoming a martial artist or a combat fighter in terms of training for amateur fights, really trying to skill build, go through the various belt progressions and master this art. There's so much that it can give you, but namely, in this video, I want to talk about specifically how it can improve and alter the way that you think and give you so many tools to handle day-to-day issues in your life, give you confidence to problem solve, and also just give you the energy to just be more creative in how you structure your life in your day-to-day stuff. So number one, it enhances focus and your sense of presence. Combat sports demands total concentration, teaching you how to shut out distractions. This laser focus is a transferable skill that can speed up learning on an academic, professional, or in your creative endeavors. One thing I found is that martial arts can really be a sense of meditation as well. When you're dealing with sparring, even just intense drilling, without even the risk of really being hurt, of just focusing on throwing a jab or throwing your kick or doing your katas and your footwork, it allows you to be in such synchronicity with your mind, body, and your soul, and also your other partner, your person, that it really allows you to be centered in what you're doing. And one of the things that I think is underrated, people talk about so much discipline, focus, but I think it's really important to see focus and attention as a skill that you can build. People always talk about it often with attention spans are going down, especially with the rise of short form media, where depending on whatever platform you're on, the average attention span can be as low as 2 seconds before someone just has to focus on one thing. And I think that martial arts really has you in both the sense that I'll talk about in terms of repetition, but also just being present with what you're doing right then. It really trains you to be centered in whatever you're focusing on. And that has so many carryovers into your life, whether it be a conversation, being able to build a skill in other patience, consistency, being able to, in times of emotional toil, being able to be present with what's going on and not let your emotions turn you around. Those are priceless skills that you'll carry with you over a lifetime. And so I feel that martial arts really gives you a centered sanctuary to build the skill of focusing. Number two, you cultivate mental agility in high-stakes environments. Martial arts creates controlled, high-pressure scenarios that mimic real-world challenges and your emotional state during them as well. Every spar or intense drill presents a new challenge, teaching you how to shift strategies quickly. Practicing under such conditions helps you learn to prioritize and act decisively, and problems feel a lot less difficult when you're used to drilling for an hour or getting punched in the face. I do believe that when you fight, it showcases who you are. And for me, I won't go into too much detail because right now, as someone who's training for fights and as an active competitor, I have to be kind of a little bit careful what I say for YouTube. Eventually the game will be shared because I think there's a lot of cool stuff that I'm learning in terms of the philosophy of martial arts and many other areas of sciences that then all coordinate together in how the human body interacts with another human body. This is super vague, but I want to say it without saying it and give away my edge, but at the same time, it's a weird balance between wanting to teach a concept, but also being a competitor in that concept because you never know who's listening. But I will say this, when you are training in martial arts, whether it be a drill, a spar, even just doing your shadow boxing, you are in a battle always with yourself. And I always say that yourself can be your worst nightmare or your greatest champion because no one knows you like you. And we have in Jungian psychology, or is it psychiatry? But in Jungian psychology and philosophy, we have this aspect of the shadow or the animus, I believe, or the anima. And it is the subconscious part of our mind, the id, the superego, all these things. But when it all condenses together, it is the 90% of your mind, which is the subconscious mind. So everything good and bad, from your strengths, your weaknesses, from your fears, trauma, your gifts, everything is coagulated together to create the silent majority of you. And I believe that when you're fighting, even as something as simple as doing a drill with a coach, that shadow part of you comes out to play. When you're interacting with yourself in a gym or a dojo, you realize how much work comes from martial arts to then teach you how to deal with yourself and your mind. And so if you have issues with dealing with boundaries or having a good defense, that will show. If you have lack of self-control and you find yourself rushing forward without having a good plan, that will show. If you're not fluid or technically savvy or too rigid, that will show. Your body keeps the score, right? And I would say in the physical sense, this is 10% of your mind, which is your conscious mind. The body is the other 90%, even though it's technically, if you look at the way a brain looks and the nervous system, this is more of the seed and this is the fruit. But that's more esoteric. When you're in the pocket, the void, as Mighty Mouse calls it, is where you have to face yourself the most. It is the danger zone, anybody's game. And I find that when you exist in that pocket 3 times a week, 2 times a week, and you're just having to face yourself over and over again, challenges in life feel a lot less difficult because you've had to face essentially your worst fears of yourself constantly. And I think that's sort of pressure testing that I feel that, on a more extreme level, soldiers face it. Even sometimes I would say parents face it, because when you're raising someone who's essentially a small version of you, all the ways that you might still have to mature and raise yourself come out because your child is going to trigger your shadow, because it is your shadow, right? And so I feel that when you are training a martial art, really you're training your mind, you're training your understanding and your mastery of yourself, and it translates so readily. Difficult conversations are easier to have because you just got punched in the face yesterday. When you're thinking about persevering through a problem and it feels like you can't make it, you have a reminder of you being able to do a 3-minute drill without stopping, because your coach was saying if anybody stops, you're doing 20 push-ups and you're gonna do that drill again. So you build a gas tank, not only physically, but mentally as well. And so it also builds camaraderie. This is, I'm gonna say, a spiritual special club when you do hard things with other people, because you know what it's like to go through it. And so it builds that community, or the memories of community with you as well, that allow you to persevere. You can see other examples of people going through their own journeys around you, so you can borrow that inspiration and courage and faith from what you're seeing as well. And so there's so many different journeys that you can take in martial arts, and that's why I love it. It really is a domain of mastery, no different than painting or dancing or raising a child. It's something that you really can't master in a lifetime, because there's so many angles. It's all about what your mind is open or closed to. And I think the typical path for martial art is the physical path. And a lot of people just take it alone, and that's perfectly amazing, right? Whether it be as a workout, a form of self-defense, a way to build confidence, a way to make friends in a way that's fun to you, you can do whatever you want with it. But I think there's also a second, deeper layer, even a third one, that is more of the journey that you can use martial arts as a metaphor for developing yourself as well. And I find that it almost is the benefit of 2 or 3, like when they have those sales, buy 1, get 3 free. That's what I feel like martial arts gives you the opportunity to do, which is really being able to master yourself and your mind through the metaphor or the skill of building a combat art as well. There's this game called Ghost of Tsushima, and there's this archer, he's this master archer, older guy. But he was saying that the way of the bow, right? I think even Miyato Musashi talks about this as well. When you see the way in everything, you can master in all things. I think I'm getting that quote wrong, but it's basically the idea or the concept of the middle way, or mastering yourself. That these physical things that we do on this plane isn't just about the physical thing as well, but the spirit of you within that physical thing as well. And that as you master one thing, you master yourself. Wax off, right? And when you master a thing, you master yourself. So moving on into the last point, which is a bit more practical. I do believe theory is honestly the basis of understanding for practicality, but I also respect that for a lot of people, when I'm talking about these esoteric concepts, it helps to ground it in practical things, because that's how I've anchored it as well. I just get more fun talking about the theory, because then I know I can always do the practical with it after, but I know that when I'm explaining it to you, it's also better for me to also include the practical aspects as well for something that you can do tomorrow, right? So number 3 is leverage the power of repetition. The cyclical nature of sparring and drilling reinforces learning through practice. Repeated exposure to challenging situations builds mastery and cements skills over time. Drillers make killers. And so I said it there pretty succinctly. Whenever you want to build expertise, you have to do it many times. And one thing that martial arts gets you used to is the idea of throwing a cross 100 times, every time. And learning to make space for yourself emotionally when it gets boring, when it gets difficult, when you're tired, when you're hungry, when you have a bruise from practice the other day and you still show up to do more. It really teaches you the importance of delayed gratification and really trains yourself to extend. In the first point, I talked about how to rebuild your attention span and how martial arts can really allow you to have a form of almost violent, badass meditation, because breathing and being still is a very essential form of meditation. But knowing how to be in the pocket when someone is throwing a kick at you and keeping your breath under control and being calm in that is a different type of meditation that is very effective as well. I can't tell you how many times I've ended a sparring session and I couldn't think about anything. My head was just empty. And when you're someone who has an analytical mind, creative mind, and you're constantly going through stuff, the one benefit of martial arts is that it helps you shut down, so you're only really thinking from a somatic place, a kinesthetic bodily place. And it really allows you to tap into a different type of intelligence that I think is very underutilized and almost lost once you get past the age of definitely a lot of it drops out once you get past 8, 9, and 10, when you're not doing recess as much. You're not doing these random bodily movements that have you train your body in different ways in terms of prior perception. But it definitely drops out, definitely after high school. And so then movement is really a choice. And it's kind of crazy to think about it that way, because if we, say for instance you have a pet, if you never took that pet outside and never walked it, never gave it food, never gave it sun, the animal control will be called on you. You're abusing your animal, right? But we don't see our human bodies the same way, even though we operate the same way, right? When we move, energy flows better, blood flows better, thoughts move and they get fresh air into them. You get new ideas, new perspectives when you move physically or mentally in terms of absorbing new concepts. And so we don't do that for ourselves and see it as almost a mandated thing. We're more likely to walk our dog than to walk ourselves or give ourselves some sort of athletic exercise so that we can move our body. But what I found is that when you incorporate these mindsets into yourself, whether or not you choose to do a martial art, though I highly recommend, I think everyone should learn basic self-defense. It only takes about 6 months to a year and a half to get enough to feel confident that in a worst case scenario, at least you won't be caught off guard. You're more likely to be able to protect yourself. But I think there's such a great opportunity to develop your mind and create a new skill set that you can carry with you in life. I think honestly, a lot of the best things you can take from martial art aren't even about fighting. Learning the art of ukemi, which is the art of falling, is very important. Older people, when they get, I think it's 50 plus, the thing that's most likely going to kill you when you're older is falling and not being able to fall correctly, because you're more fragile, your bones are more brittle, your skin has glass skin, paper skin and glass bones.
I was born with glass bones and paper skin. Every morning I break my legs, and every afternoon I break my arms.
You're a lot more fragile when you get older, especially if you haven't been training your entire life. And so a lot of things that get older people is when they fall, they hit something and they don't know how to get up, or they're so weak after losing blood that by the time an ambulance comes to get them, if they don't have that press button thing that can send an alarm to an ambulance to come get them, they won't make it in time because they didn't have the proper instincts training them to protect themselves when they fall. They can't get up. And so learning things like learning how to fall, learning how to breathe, learning how to think, those are, I think, the most important things that you can take away from martial arts, and not only learn within at least the basic concept within a day, probably the quickest thing you can learn in martial arts, but also the longest lasting thing you can take from martial arts into your life that can really impact and benefit you on a holistic level. And so, you don't have to go in it to be Batman. If you want to, that's kind of what excited me, then go for it. Whatever inspires you to do it. But I think there's a lot of things to learn from martial arts that can teach you how to be a better person and a better executor of the life that you want in your day-to-day moments as well. So I hope that helped, and I'll see you soon. Peace.